Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 36th episode of Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're glad to have you here. It's Sunday morning, May 13th, 2018. Apparently it's Mother's Day, so for all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. And for other people, well, the nice thing about mothers is literally every human being, basically every mammal has or had one at some point. Whether you were in an embryonic or a nascent stage, you basically had to be born to a mother of some variation. Now, maybe people are being made in test tubes, like They Live with Roddy Piper, made in 1988. Maybe there's some people out there like that. Once you put on the glasses, then you can identify them. But any naturally occurring mammalian being has a mother. So, and probably a father too. Now, yeah, they might make up a bunch of nonsense, they got injected with sperm or whatever the case may be, and then they're able to create a living, breathing creature without a father. But, the sperm still has to come from somewhere. Humans are not able to, obviously a male can create sperm, but humans in a laboratory aren't able to create sperm in a test tube that's actually a functional creature that can drill into an egg cell and then create a baby out of that. So I guess there are both mothers and fathers to all mammalian creatures. Now, a lot of people don't know one or the other, but that's not going to be the topic of discussion today. So on this May 13th, 2008, last night, ladies and gentlemen, it was it's about mid-60s, little shade outside, but it's a pretty nice day. So I went out and I did a survey of all the fruits and vegetable plants, and unfortunately it wasn't entirely positive. See, there are two apple trees, well, there's three apple trees out there. One's a big old one that makes an abundance of apples every single year. It's great to have it. Of course you got to prune it every once in a while, then it'll run on 8 cylinders. But there's two other trees, and one of the tree is completely dead. See, what happened is, on the base of the tree, when you buy these fruit trees, they have this plastic that goes around the bottom, and what that's for is so that mice and rodents and rats don't chew up the bark. Because if they chew up the bark, the entire circumference of it, then the tree dies. And so the apple tree out there is about 4 years old, and what happened is that plastic circle that goes around the base just deteriorated and kind of gave up. So this last winter was sort of a weird one. It was long, it was cold, it happened in mid-April too. So looks like one of the rodents got after one of the apple trees, and partially got after the other one too. So the two apple trees out there that are 4 years old, one of them looks like it's completely dead and deceased, and then the other one, it's getting there. It's still got some budding and leaves on the branches though, so maybe it'll be fine, but maybe not. So, that's just unfortunate, sad to see and all that stuff too. So, I don't know if I'll replace them or do what with them. But, see, the thing is, the feral cat, yeah, he's supposed to hunt down mice and everything. But the way that was set up, when you get winter, mice can burrow underneath the winter, and when they need to find sources of food, trees maintain an internal temperature year-round. So even though they're dormant and they're not doing anything, they're still living entities. So during winter time, mice obviously needs to find food, and most other creatures like worms are buried deep in the soil, and there's not really many fruits or vegetables to find. So it's got to chew on bark and cause a ruckus in that regard. So unfortunately, one of the mice found the two apple trees out there and caused a ruckus on that. So yeah, it was a little disheartening to find that, but that's why you go after this stuff with all guns blazing. Because if you have 10 fruit trees and 2 of them fall by the wayside, you still got 8 fruit trees. Now, does that mean you're sad and sorrowful for the true trees that went down? To an extent, yeah, but the more you bring yourself down and drag yourself down and allow you to become in a negative place, then the less quality time you can put into the other trees. So that's why it's very important to respect the deceased and everything, but to try to move on as quickly as possible so that you can better provide for the living entities or the living fruit trees. Now, about all I could do was inspect that plastic casing that went around the basin. Apparently there's a type of plastic, or there's a type of wrap you can put on the tree. So most likely probably hit up Menards today and check that out too, along with a few other things as well. So there's some raspberry plants out front here too, and originally I started with about 7. See, I went down to Minneapolis, picked up 7 plants from somebody along with some bunch of compost, and then I just planted them in the front yard here. Basically, they were put in a spot to where it would make mowing the lawn a lot easier. So after I put them in there, it was probably early fall, so it was hard to tell whether they were living, dying, or in a dormant state. But yeah, it looks like about 3 of them have a couple leaves and a lot of dead branches, and then about 4, the rest of them pretty much have all dead branches. So yeah, it's good that some of them are living, but it's a very low percentage of them that are living, as what you would expect. So those are, well, and of course the starter plants, there's tried about 200 of them, and it looks like probably less than half of them are surviving. I mean, apparently they're only supposed to be in there for 3 to 4 weeks, so some of these bigger containers, they can last longer, like the one, the yogurt containers or the sour cream containers, that I showed in probably episode 8. But so what I'll probably do is, now the garden, the garden's got a bunch of compost in there and all that BS, so I'll probably try to get the starter plants that I got now that look like they're somewhat growing, get them in the garden, see if they can. They've been outside for a few days now, so hopefully they'll be hardy enough. I am kind of taking a big swing here though, because see, what I plan to do is half the starter plants that didn't make it, just empty the dirt out of those little planter holder deals, and then probably just refill it with the seed starter and then start over again, because in a month it'll be middle of June, so it's not too late in the season to plant stuff then. So I'll probably just go ahead and starter plants now, move them out in the garden pretty quick here, and then start over with some new starter plants and see after a month if I can transplant them. And at the same time, while I'm at Menards today, I'll probably just get a bunch of the potted plants that are already growing, so that with pretty good certainty that they are going to be great again. Now, usually it's probably a good idea to check the weather forecast, because it may get to below freezing yet. Generally after Memorial Day, it's probably when you want everything planted, and you can't really plant everything at once. I mean, it would, especially if you got a couple hundred plants, it would take a while, and you want to spend a good quality time to measure out the distances and to put in some clean dirt, and to make sure you got your irrigation set up well so that you can pretty much water everything. Because there will be times when it doesn't rain for a few weeks, and if you don't water it, the leaves will wilt and die. So that's why I figure it's important to do things modularly or separately, and so 50 plants one day, 50 plants another, and so on and so forth. So hopefully I can starter plants now, I'll probably shove them in the garden, and then start over with some new starter plants, and probably buy some from Menards or Fleet, or that guy from Malacca. He's a pretty nice guy, so it's always good to support good quality, morally upstanding, hardworking men and women of America, and extraterrestrial too, if they choose to be citizens as well. As far as about the honeyberries, it's about 10 of those plants. They look like they're growing pretty good. I might just walk around outside with a camera and just give you a visual to see what the hell is going on. Now, you're probably thinking, why would you even care? And yeah, I can kind of understand that too, but that's one of the advantages of living, just living anywhere in general. If you got a coffin apartment, if you got a south-facing window in a coffin apartment, then you can just grow plants in a little container and spend a lot more quality time looking into them. See, some of the indoor plants in here, they may get neglected a little bit, but most of them hopefully are pretty resilient and hardy and can take the heat, so it's not a huge deal. If basically the sticker says if the soil, the 2 inches of the soil is dry, then water them and then give them liquid plant food every couple weeks. So I'll usually get these pellets and then just drop them in the 1 gallon milk containers, and hopefully they dissolve by the time I pour the rainwater on the plants too. So apparently you can't pour too much in, then it'll start getting moldy and everything as well. So that's another fallacy that you may come across. But for the most part, yeah, it's pretty rewarding when it works out. You don't really have to spend an inordinate amount of time. I mean, most of this stuff is fairly common sense. Yeah, there is a bit of luck involved and some hit and miss, and weather patterns get a little sketchy too. And when I first got those indoor plants from Walmart back in probably March, then we basically had straight shade for a month, and plants generally like sun, so that didn't really help very much. A lot of the plants that said bright light on them, the second go around, the plants that said bright light on them I tried to avoid, because you can't force the sun to come out, but that's why it's a good idea to get the medium or low light plants, because even without the sun, they're still going to be successful. Now, there are patterns that are a good idea to look into. I mean, the sun does rise every single day. It's just a matter of whether it's covered by clouds or not. And unfortunately, back in March, it was basically constant shade. And then middle of April, it just snowed a lot too. So there's probably a lot of shade back then as well. I mean, do I remember the weather back then precisely? Not really, but seeing that was the case. But we've been getting a lot of sunlight lately. Today looks like it'll be sunny, mid-70s. Great day to go outside. Probably stick some of these starter plants in the ground, because, well, I don't know, it is a bit hairy too, because it's a good idea to read the weather forecast. I mean, if it gets too hot, maybe the plants will wither and die, and if it gets too cold, then of course the frost will kill them off. So it's important just to read the weather forecast and see if there's not going to be any temperature extremes. And about a week in advance is pretty much all you can do. And it's not always 100% accurate, but that's the thing with gardening. You take chances, you take risks. If you got big greenhouses in your backyard, you can kind of minimize risks. But if you're just an average person with a garden and a heart of gold, then you just stick some plants out there and give her hell and see what happens. And that's pretty much what we're gonna do out here, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, hopefully it'll work out, but sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Well, it looks like we're coming up to we're getting pretty close to a break here. I mean, I got some research articles, but probably shouldn't get into them just yet. Maybe after the break time, ladies and gentlemen. So, probably in the near future we'll have a show called Good Times, Balls Deep. The host of that show is currently satisfying sponsorships and procuring funding for that show. Whether his intentions are to buy a studio or sound or video equipment, not really entirely sure, but we haven't had any formal meetings about it. It's just pretty much everything is on the fly. And yeah, as far as planning goes, we definitely don't do any planning for this show. Well, I mean, yeah, there is planning to do it 4 days a week, but anything beyond that is just not really, there's just not a whole lot that goes into it, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, maybe I will film and show some of this garbage that's going on outside, so that you can at least put a visual on what I'm talking about, and maybe some more instructional videos at some point, but I haven't really done anything that merits instructions lately. It's mostly just pretty simple stuff, but I guess it's stuff that maybe you wouldn't encounter just because of circumstances in your existence. But yeah, Good Times, Balls Deep, it'll definitely be happening in the near future. Like I said, he's satisfying sponsors. Takes a lot of time to satisfy sponsors and everything too. So I mean, like the sponsor I met with last week, looks like they want to go ahead and start funding the show. So I'll basically have to go, satisfy their needs for 8 hours, and they can sponsor the show for that. So it's a pretty good symbiotic relationship there. Now, does that mean the quality of the show will deteriorate if I'm spending and allocating time towards sponsorship? It might, but I mean, it can't really get much worse. So that's there's a good side and this bad side. Good side, it can't really get much worse. The bad side, maybe it can get worse, but we just don't know yet. So sometimes what you don't know can hurt you, and in this case, maybe that will be the case, but we'll see. So it's just, I mean, it's important to get funding and sponsorships and all that garbage because time isn't free. Now, yeah, it's only 4 hours a week, and there's 168 hours in a week, so that's like more than maybe about 3% of your time. And then you figure 33% for sleeping, and then you got maybe 5% for exercising, so you got a lot of time, you know, maybe 30% for eating and stuff and hanging out on Facebook. So basically, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of time for there'll probably be about 25% of the time for sponsorship deals and allocating time to satisfy their needs and wants and desires and lusts and everything like that. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Tex Messages on the Parasite of the Show. Sunday morning, May 13th, 2018 on Mother's Day. Hopefully you can enjoy Mother's Day with some motherly figure in your existence, but if not, then just, you know, treat it as you can treat it as an average Sunday. Just take it easy for the day. But it is a nice day out, so pretty much got to do something. See, I used to go by the motto, if by about 4 or 5 o'clock I feel like a completely worthless sack of garbage, then I know that I properly rested through the course of the day. But, see, we used to do text messages just 3 days a week, and you know, I found out on Sunday morning I just wake up and stare at the wall, so I figured, why not just do it 4 days a week? You know, the ratings are already in the toilet, so they can't get any worse. And I figured it's good experience. See, when I first, it was actually a good idea to first start the Sunday show because for a while I was having these static topics that I was worried would eventually run out of steam and I wouldn't have anything to talk about. So the Sunday show was an experimental run where I would just do strictly research articles, phys.org, science.news, naturalnews.com, greenmedinfo.com, medicaldaily.com. All these websites, try to extract information from them, see what they're up to, see what they're looking into, and then inject my viewpoints on the matters. And I mean, in my opinion, I figure the Sunday show, you know, I mean, obviously from a viewership standpoint, nothing on this show is successful, but it felt like it went pretty well. Like, I mean, you know, the 2 or 3 of you guys that are actually watching may have received a good education, and for the most part, it's just fun to do. You know, I mean, I'm having a good time here. Yeah, they're not balls deep, but you know, I'm definitely having a good time. So once good times, balls deep hits, then it's just full flanking ahead. But between now and then, we're just going to have to deal with text messages here. And I'm the Parasite of the Show, Rick Tex. We'll be back in 5 minutes about. Welcome back to Tex Messages, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Glad to have you here on Sunday morning, Mother's Day, May 13th, 2018. Broadcasting from Elk River, Minnesota. That's about in central Minnesota. Looks like it's going to be mid-70s outside today. Sun will pretty much be... Apparently the forecast was partly cloudy, but looks like the sun is out right now and doesn't appear to be too many clouds in the sky. So that'll be a nice day to get outside and maybe stick some plants in the ground and see what happens, and hopefully there isn't any frost in the next couple weeks or month or so. You never really know. Weather patterns can change quickly. For the most part though, our weather forecasters have gone pretty good lately. You know, being a dirt track racing fan, you definitely pay close attention to the weather. That farmers probably do. They probably pay closer attention. I mean, dirt track racing, you know, all you care about that it doesn't rain on Friday, and every other day it can be a monsoon as far as you care. Well, I mean, yeah, there does need to be a bit of track prep work too. So it's probably important that it maybe doesn't rain Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Every other day, then it's just doesn't really matter. I mean, there could be hurricane, gale winds, and all that stuff too, and it just couldn't give a damn either way. So, alright, ladies and gentlemen, the other day I was poking around on science.news. One thing I found out, there's this stuff people can use on weeds. Well, I mean, they should say there's this thing available in stores called Roundup. Nobody really knows what's in it, but it's intended to kill weeds and undesirables. So, I mean, if you use it, I'd probably recommend just not using it. I mean, it gets in the ground, it probably gets in the well water, it just causes major havoc. There was one time I went to my parents' house and there's a bunch of these weird brown spots on the yard. So I was kind of asking them, what happened here? Why is that? Is there like some dog crapping in the yard or what? And they're like, no, we used some Roundup, and yeah, I guess it just kills everything. So it was just, they would spray some weeds and then, or dandelions, and then it would just, a big circle of deadness would happen. And I don't know if it's recovered yet. Haven't seen the yard in a while, but yeah, it just looked like it was a pretty stupid thing to do. I mean, it doesn't take much effort to go pull weeds, you know. Yeah, you might have to get on your hands and knees or sit down and everything too, but usually whatever you put into gardening, you get out of it. So if you put a bunch of poison in the garden, then you're going to get poison. It's really that simple. And you're probably going to poison other people too. And not only that, you're supporting a corporation that's almost always at the center of controversy and just bad, evil doings. You know, I'm sure if St. Cloud Superman had his way, he'd probably take them down. I'm talking about Monsanto. They're the company that makes Roundup. They own the patent and all that, so nobody really knows what's in it. So what they found is the inactive ingredients that are aware are in Roundup. You know, when they call them inactive, it means they're benign, but what happens is when you mix them with glyphosate, then they become even more volatile and dangerous and kill things at a far higher rate. It's like, say you got somebody with a machine gun, and then they're shooting a bunch of animals or pheasants or whatever, and if you get them on horseback, now they're riding on horseback and they can shoot more pheasants in a small amount of time. So that's probably a comparison to when you mix these inactive, because a horse by itself, yeah, it can run over people and kick you in the face and stuff, but it's not a fatal being, or it's not going to put you in any mortal peril. But when you combine a horse with a guy and a machine gun, it's a pretty dangerous combination, which is probably what's going on here with the glyphosate and everything else in the Roundup that people don't actually know about. So the new U.S. National Toxicology Program, they got this data that shows enhanced toxicity can kill human cells. You know, the argument for Roundup is it's going to kill plant cells, which are apparently not as strong as human cells, but I guess according to this, it proves that it kills human cells. So, just in general, there's 4,000, quote, inert ingredients approved by EPA for use in pesticides. One of them in Roundup is called polyethioxylated, which amplifies the toxicity of Roundup. And unfortunately, the EPA doesn't really even know what's in it. And there's a Freedom of Information Act once where they were looking at all these emails, and one of the scientists said that Roundup was never actually tested in its current state. For example, they would isolate glyphosate, and then they would just test that, and then try to extrapolate that to what the expectation of the actual Roundup formula would be. But since the Roundup formula, you'd think just somebody off the street could test it and post results somewhere. Like, hell, I could probably pay some high school kids and say, all right, test up Roundup. But the unfortunate part is it's a very dangerous product, so probably bad things would happen if I were to do that. Now, yeah, I mean, anyone can probably get a bunch of mice and rats and guinea pigs and test them out, but I don't really know what the test would be exactly. If you say you feed the rats a diet of grass and whatever else grows in the ground, and then you spray a bunch of Roundup on it, and then a month later you try to reintroduce plant life, and then feed the rats that same plants, and then to see what happened. Maybe some kind of experiment like that. I mean, is it going to be peer reviewed and all that and published? No. One of the reasons, I mean, I'm obviously not a PhD. I don't have the money or the funding to be a PhD, and certainly wouldn't really want to allocate any time to sit around inside a college for hours on end to get a PhD. So, yeah, I mean, do you have a little lesser credibility based on that? I guess, yeah. I mean, college does show that you can dedicate yourself to something, and that, you're privileged and wealthy and all that stuff too. So, well, it sounds like someone laid an egg outside. But the reality is, it's just a good idea to at least practice some common sense when you're using items such as Roundup or Round Down, or adding and subtracting and addition and multiplication and division. And yeah, even if you don't have well water, it's still all the poisonous ingredients are just going to fester in the soil, and then it's going to wreak havoc on all the bacteria and the enzymes that are already in the soil, and it's going to take a very long time for it to recover. Now, it is a bit arrogant to think that humans can significantly alter the landscape of the environment and the ecology and all that. But I mean, when you're trying to work symbiotically with the land to benefit yourself and to benefit the land at the same time, yeah, you need to put a little bit more time and effort into things like getting rid of weeds, or planting things where you want them to be planted and everything too, and putting up fences and shade barriers and all, sun barriers and all this other goofy stuff. And I mean, anything you put into the ground that you don't really know what it is, it's just not a good idea. Even food from McDonald's, for example. Maybe if you mix that in your compost, it's got some weird preservatives in it that'll just wreak havoc and kill all the living bacteria that's trying to break down the other compost too. So it's just important to exercise common sense and to try to put at least a little thought and effort and energy into what it is you're doing, rather than just taking shortcuts because you don't want to bend over to pull a dandelion or pull a weed out of the ground. The other thing that helps too is, if you are pulling weeds, usually the best time to do it is the day after a monsoon or significant rainfall. The soil will be a little softer. The morning time too, moisture comes up to not always to the top of the surface, but moisture comes up at night when it gets cooler outside. So that's a good time to pull weeds too in the morning. I mean, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 80 degrees outside, and the soil is completely dry, and you're trying to pull weeds, it's just not going to happen. Especially if you got more clay soil. If you got pretty sandy soil, it'll probably work out most any time of the day. Over the most part, the more moist the soil is, the softer it's going to be, so then you can pull weeds out a lot easier. That's why when you see downed trees, it's usually during some major heavy rainstorm, because it softens the soil up so much that it can, and if the wind gets super strong, it can grab all the leaves on the tree and literally pull a lot of the roots out of the ground and snap off the rest of them that are in there pretty deep. And it happens more often in places where the water table is really high, then the roots don't get too deep. If the water table is very low, the roots are going to go down and get super deep and then grab all the water and moisture and nutrients out of the ground. So then the trees are anchored pretty good. But if you live next to a lake, or out here, for example, it's a pretty high water table. There's a swamp about a block in one direction. So yeah, the trees probably aren't anchored to the ground too well. I mean, there haven't been any trees that are uprooted, but a few trees that big limbs have snapped off too. In fact, last year one time a big branch snapped off and it literally blocked the front door. So that was interesting, but probably should put maybe some tape around the wound of the tree too, or cut off the branch and then just put some paint on the end of it so that you don't expose the wound to the environment and all that other goofy stuff. Or maybe call some tree pruners out here. Yeah, the neighbor here, they had probably about 5 big trees, and then they called some pruners out there, but it was about $3,000 to cut all those trees down. So it's a lot of money to cut trees down. So, and you can't just grab a chainsaw and hack them off at the base. Then they might, knock your house in half or fall on your neighbor's power line or something like that. So, you got to get the harness and get up there, cut them from the top, and work your way from the top to the bottom, and hopefully you don't fall or cut your hand off or anything like that. Safety first is always the most important thing as far as cutting trees and just doing any work in general, especially with power tools. Well, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up to another break here. We're going to have good times, balls deep in the near future. That's the producer of the show is just coming up with great ideas that'll make St. Cloud great again. And he's just thinking on 8 cylinders and everything too. So, he's a very skilled person in the art of discussion and talking and everything too. See, one thing I found out is that I really enjoy talking to people, but people generally don't enjoy talking to me. So it seemed appropriate to at least run a talk show to promote good times, balls deep, because he's a gentleman that actually has skill, talent, and intelligence. And if he really wanted to, he could probably get an honorary degree from New York University or the University of Minnesota or St. Cloud Technical College. So it's a very erudite, scholarly man. He probably reads more than your typical professor of philosophy. He's a bit busy guy too. He's got to satisfy sponsors, got a family and all that garbage. So and now apparently he has to find somebody that hit his car in a parking lot. And yeah, it's unfortunate that people have to do that. See, if you accidentally hit somebody's car in a parking lot or ding their door or whatever, it's a good idea just to tell them, especially if you're in an area. See, if you're leaving Walmart, alright, a couple of years, actually this past winter, I was in Walmart. Well, might have recanted this story already, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it again. So I was in Walmart, I pull up, there's this big huge van next to me, and I see a couple kids in there kind of eyeing up the car. I figured, well, that's weird, but I'll go inside anyways. So I went inside, got the cheese, the tuna, and basically some of about the only 5 items I can actually eat. Bought that, went outside. Then that van is on the other side of the parking lot, and they kind of creep towards me. I'm thinking, well, this is kind of cool. Maybe you're going to ask me about the car, or about ending the Fraudo Reserve, or how awesome InfoWars is. But no, she just pulled up next to me and said, yeah, I hit your car, I'm sorry about that. I was like, well, you know what, since you told me, no problem at all. It's a complete non-issue. It's a car, it's a material object. It's probably one of the better cars made. It's got the all-aluminum body, best fuel efficiency, best aerodynamics, and looks the coolest and everything. But the reality is it's still a car. It's a piece of metal and aluminum and carbon fiber and magnesium and titanium. So I won't worry about it. We just went off on our merry ways. Now, if she would have smacked the car and then just took off right away, then I would have probably been fuming. But fortunately Walmart probably does have cameras in their parking lot. So I would have been able to find out who it was, probably went after them. Sort of like we're going to have to go after some corporations in the near future, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, probably would have had to go after her then in that case. And, just by being an honest person, she alleviated all those potential fallacies or potential war path people that, would be coming after her. So it's a good idea just to be honest and to be forthcoming and to not be afraid to communicate with people, especially if you do something stupid. There was one time I was at my work. I was sitting out in my car. I had the door propped open. I thought it was propped open all the way. Then a big gust of wind came and it propped open even more and it hit the person's car next to me. I mean, there was a bit of a scratch there. So, I mean, it's one of those things where if you didn't tell them, they probably wouldn't notice, but still, it was a good idea just to tell them. So I just went in and I told her, and she's like, yeah, you know, there's so much dirt on there, I didn't even notice it in the first place, and that was pretty much it. I mean, it was, you know, if I wouldn't have told her and she would have noticed, it would have been, she'd probably known that it was my car, and been like, what's wrong with this guy? I mean, is he an idiot or what? He has no respect for anybody else's property or anything like that, so that's why it's important to be, especially at Walmart. If you hit somebody's car, you know that they're probably going to come out someday or sometime in the near future. I mean, it's not, unless they're an employee or whatever the case may be. But I mean, if you're at somebody's apartment and you knock somebody's car, and as far as you know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, they could be sleeping in a deep sleep. I mean, you can easily just put a note on the car, be like, yeah, I ran in your car, I was completely inebriated, shouldn't have been driving. Hopefully you don't tell the police because I don't want to get a $10,000 DUI fine and everything, but you know, sorry about hitting your car. If you want to call me and discuss the matter, here's my number and everything too. So I mean, it's not that hard to do that, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we all make mistakes. And then of course there's the doing something penalty. The more you do, the more mistakes you're going to make. For example, the more plants you plant, the more are going to die. It's just how life works. You know, the more children you have, the higher probability one of them might die, and you know, it's sad, it's sorrowful, it's melancholy, it's all that, but then you just got to move on and try to make your communities great again. So, yeah, just being an honest person is way more important than trying to save a buck or trying to screw over other people. That's just really not a good way to exist. You know, from a materialistic standpoint, yeah. And a monetary standpoint, yeah, being a dishonest person is probably the way to go, but it just doesn't work that way, especially if you have any type of belief in a higher power and all that stuff. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, good times, ball is deep. You know, I'm pretty excited for it. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Someone will lose, someone must win. Only
Welcome back to Tex Messages, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're glad to have you here once again, Sunday morning, May 13th, 2018. Looks like we got some sunny conditions outside. Probably a good day to stick a few plants in the ground. They've been in the starter pots for a little while now. If they're in there any longer, they'll probably die. So, don't really have many options then. Just stick them in the ground. Maybe probably go to Menards, buy some more seed packets, and give another crack at these indoor or these starter plants, and maybe buy a few starter plants. Maybe not today, but who knows? Once you get there, then you kind of figure all that stuff as you go. Wing it is basically the thing to do. Now, generally, it may not be a good idea with gardening just to wing it, but I have the benefit here of not depending totally on the food you grow yourself for survival and sustenance. Now, this was the 1800s, and everything I grew was the only thing that I ate over the course of the winter. Probably would take it a lot more seriously and would spend a lot more time on it as well. But probably should just spend more time on it, and be more organized with it too. But I mean, for you, ladies and gentlemen at home, I'm gonna be honest with you. Gardening in the 21st century is almost entirely hobby based. So whatever you're comfortable doing is probably the best method of approach. I mean, you don't need to get all serious and gung ho and worried about plants dying and everything because you're gonna starve all winter. Your family's gonna starve. Just try to enjoy your time, and too, the more you enjoy things, the better you'll probably be at them. That doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be the best of the best, but you give yourself more chance of success. Now, see, the most successful people you will meet, usually they enjoy what they're doing. But that does not mean if you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to be the most successful. See, there might be 10 requirements for success, and enjoying your job is one of them. But then there's still the 9 others that you got to satisfy as well. Natural talent, putting in the time, eating healthy, sleeping right, having a stable family, alleviating transportation, not getting shot, and just basic things like that. Natural talent is definitely one too. But sort of the onus is on you is to find what you're good at and gifted at, and then if you enjoy it, to run with that. It's just a matter of finding a few core principles to follow, and then that's generally a good path to walk down. And then just make sure it's not anybody else's path too, because if you're on somebody else's path, it's just going to cause mayhem, and nobody enjoys that. There's another article I found last night, naturalnews.com. Oh yeah, you might be wondering why I'm spending Saturday night on the computer, but that's what you do once you get up into your 30s or so. So, back when I was doing some work on this place, I put in some new kitchen cabinets, and they're about $2,000 for all of them. What they are is they're basically all this wood particle. I don't even know what they are exactly, but some cheap wood particle that they're all pressed and glued together. Then they got some laminate. They're called laminate cabinets. Now, if you were to get the real wood cabinets, they would probably cost anywhere from 5 to 10 times the amount. So maybe instead of $2,000, it would have been $20,000 for cabinets. So I figured, all right, I'll just get the laminate ones. I mean, they're new, they look nice and everything, and why not? But one of the things I found is that they had a very awful stench to them, especially when they were new. Now, they may still have an awful stench to them, but I might have just gotten used to it, because as I've alluded to in earlier episodes, it seems like anytime I leave the place here for a couple days and come back, there's always a rotten stench that hits me in the face, and still haven't figured out where it's coming from. If it's the laminate flooring or the cabinets or what. But what I'm trying to say and imply to you, the ladies and gentlemen at home, is that when you put stuff in your house, just because it's expensive does not mean it's going to be of higher quality. But try to get things that are, hardwood, top quality, just good stuff that's close as nature to possible. If you start getting laminate flooring that's all this glued together crap, and then if you start getting buffalo board or particle board, just this garbage that's has glue and sealants and everything too, it's going to be unhealthy for you, and you're going to have to breathe those fumes in all the time when you're home and sleeping and everything. So it's better off just to spend the extra money on the good quality stuff. And not only that, but the resale value of the good quality stuff is basically, you recoup your losses. So not only are you being a healthy person and making yourself great again by getting the high quality stuff, but when you go to resell the house, you're also getting all the money back. Now if you get some cheap crap, it might fall apart and then you might have to replace it, and then when you sell the house, people are going to know it's cheap crap, so the price will follow that as well. Now like all the flooring here too, it's that laminate flooring garbage. I could have got the hardwood flooring was probably about 4 times the cost, but looking back on it, I could have spent an extra $20,000 and then just had top quality stuff in here, and then if I ever need to resell the house, I can just recoup the losses then. So I mean, the reason why I chose to do the cheap crap is because I was doing all the work myself, and I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money on good quality stuff and then just break it or not install it properly and have to tear it apart again. So that's my justification for putting cheap garbage in here. Now, if I had to do it, if you're paying a professional, so if the professional will install cheap garbage for 10 grand or good stuff for 30 grand, chances are pretty good that good stuff is probably the way to go. If the only difference in cost is material cost. Now, they probably will mark it up a little bit, because if they're working with quality material, then there's more liability. Like if they break something and they have to replace it, then it's going to cost them more money. So just because the material only costs $10,000 more, but they're charging $50,000 more, it's probably due to liabilities and all this other goofy stuff. So I mean, just from we obviously focus on health with this show, ladies and gentlemen. So from a health perspective, it just makes sense to buy quality stuff, like not garbage that's going to smell up your house or release a bunch of formaldehyde or other toxic fumes. Because this study at the University of Iowa, what they did is they went into 16 houses. And then they had a, it was a polyurethane equipped passive air samplers. So they could go up and, sample the air right next to a stove or a wall or a window or a door or a microwave or a cabinet or floor or bathroom or a bathtub, and see where toxins are coming from. What they found is there are these things called polychlorinated biphenyl compounds, or PCBs. They're manufactured by Monsanto up until the 70s, and then it's classified as a toxin. EPA banned PCBs due to their link to cancer and birth defects. So I mean, they are carcinogenic and have potential to cause endocrine disrupting. Say what they are, the PCBs byproducts, they come from the sealants that are used in the cabinetry, and the way the wood is treated, it turns it into a poison. So the PCB is basically a byproduct. It's not directly putting the PCB into it. It's just all the glue and the sealant that they're using, because the cabinets in here, they're just all a bunch of little wood particles just smashed together and glued together. So by weight, there's probably more glue by weight than the actual wood inside, laminate cabinets, unfortunately. And what they found, there's 3 different types of PCBs found in disturbingly high amounts, and most of them were coming from the finished cabinetry was the primary source. And there's a higher level in newer homes, so probably newer cabinets. So it's probably a good idea when you install them, if you want to install a cheap garbage, to just run a fan on them and open some windows to let them air out. Otherwise, you might feel really sick the first couple of days and then maybe get used to it. But just airing out your house in general is always a good idea. Between May and probably through September, there's always at least one window open here with a big overhang. So if it does rain, it's not going to rain inside. And if I'm going to be around all day, I'll just try to open up as many windows as what's convenient. Maybe run a fan to keep the air circulating. So then it just airs out the house a little bit, and the indoor plants too is a good thing to have. That sort of cleans up, mops up the air a little bit. So yeah, I mean, if you put cheap garbage in your house, it's going to, especially here in wintertime, where you have to pretty much keep your house sealed up, then it's even more critical to put quality material inside your house. I mean, if you live in Texas and you can pretty much leave a window open year round, it's probably not a huge deal. But I mean, if you want to run air conditioning, you want to close your windows, then yeah, it probably is a huge deal. But most likely in hotter weather too, it probably, creates a more volatile environment for these PCBs that off gas. So then it's probably even more toxic when it gets super hot out. So yeah, I guess it's just always important to put quality materials into your homes. So to get into technical terms here, the decomposition of dichlorobenzyl peroxide, the ingredient in cabinet seals, is responsible for producing the toxic compounds in the newer cabinets. So yeah, I mean, it's just, it could cause cancer, birth defects, endocrine disruptors. And we're already bombarded with so much junk and garbage in our food supply, in our water, and in the cars we drive. Cell phones are a big one now too. Somebody on the radio the other day said that cell phones nowadays are going to be comparable to cigarettes back in the early 20th century, because people used to just smoke cigarettes all the time and never gave it a second thought. And the manufacturers, everybody that was in the know, knew that it was dangerous and it gave cancer and everything, and they were even intentionally putting products in it to make their customers addicted. Cigarettes aren't just tobacco. They're probably tobacco and all this other weird random chemicals that cause addiction. So cell phones are starting to be perceived in that same fashion. I mean, people just casually walk around with their cell phone to their head and everything and don't give it a second thought. But in reality, the study's been around for a very long time that cell phones do cause radiation. And this is back in the good old days when we didn't have these high-powered energy wavelengths pulsating through the air. Now when we're getting 5Gs and everything too, it's just gonna, it amplifies the dangers of cell phones, and it's probably gonna come to a head at some point. I mean, it's not gonna stop people from using it. I mean, people still use cigarettes nowadays, but it's just, the use of it has just declined significantly. Think of it this way: if I go anywhere in public, I don't carry my cell phone. I'll leave it in the car, and that's about it. And here in the home, it's just off in some random room. So when you go out into public and you're sitting in some bleachers, everybody around you has cell phones. And if you remember back in the good old days, everybody around you would have a cigarette, so you were basically guaranteed to get secondhand smoke. And nowadays, you're just getting secondhand radiation. So even if you yourself try to make yourself great again and to be healthy, you're still going to get bombarded with the secondhand aspect of it. Now, when I was first 21, probably actually when I was 18, and we go to the bars and stuff, and the 18 plus bars, but you were basically guaranteed that your clothes were going to smell like crap, and you're going to feel like garbage, and you're going to have a headache from all the lingering cigarette smoke and ashes and everything in the air. Then in Minnesota here, they eventually canceled it and shut it down and didn't allow smoking inside buildings. And then, you could go to a bar and you wouldn't smell like feces, or you wouldn't smell like crap afterwards. So that was a really great thing. The greatest governor of Minnesota said that he liked the idea of banning cigarettes from bars, but he said he was disappointed because he thought that the citizens and the people would be more responsible and would choose not to smoke cigarettes. So what that basically means, ladies and gentlemen, is laws shouldn't be made to force you to do something. Knowledge, cogent knowledge, and an accurate analysis and trust in where that knowledge is coming from would hopefully prompt you to do something. I mean, if you knew with 100% certainty that cell phones were causing cancer and cell radiation and mutation and everything, and people to be infertile, then you would hopefully decide to minimize your use of it and to do what you can to not expose other people to secondhand radiation. And same with cigarettes too. I mean, it's just, the thing with smoking cigarettes, it's bad for you and everything too, but it's also bad for everybody around you. And by doing it, you're just supporting very evil corporations, Philip Morris, Lorillard, and all these other goofy companies. So they make a lot of money. They have high dividends and everything to even nowadays when people know cigarettes are dangerous, but you just got to consider the collateral ramifications of what it is you're doing too. And I know most people, once they get inside that death spiral and start doing self-destructive activities, they don't really care who they drag down. And when people try to help them, then all of a sudden they're the bad guy. Well, you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes if people attack you with hate and vitriol, it's see, hatred and love are very, very similar things. So I mean, if individuals attack me with hate and vitriol, I just treat it as, you know, misguided tough love or something like that. So I mean, it's generally not a big deal. You know, sometimes it can be, but for the most part, it's pretty honest, legitimate criticism. So you can't get too mad about it. I mean, if you're legitimately, see, one thing is you can have the right message, but if you have the wrong tone, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So I mean, you could be 100% accurate in trying to educate somebody about the dangers of smoking or cell phone radiation. But you know, if you're being didactic about it and an arrogant prick about it, it's probably going to be worse then, because they're going to think, well, this guy who's a loser, I don't really like him. He's trying to tell me that cell phone radiation is bad, so since he says it and I don't really like him, I'm just going to continue to use it more. Or if you're a likable person, if you follow common sense principles and you've been correct on and accurate on a lot of things in the past, then people will probably be more prone to listen to you too. And it goes both ways too. I mean, if somebody tells you something, like a lot of people, most people I meet are probably smarter and more intelligent than me. So if somebody tells me something, I pretty much have to listen, because I have to assume that they're smarter and more intelligent, so I have to follow their lead and their command and see where it leads me. Yeah, sometimes it might lead into a rabbit hole, but for the most part, people generally don't lead you astray. They know what they're talking about. I mean, pretty much everybody you meet anywhere at any time is going to know something that you don't know. And hell, they might, you know, in my case, most of them know a lot more than me. So it's always a learning opportunity as well. Everybody's got 24 hours in a day, and everybody's brain is pretty much on all day. So irregardless of what you're doing, you're learning something. And even if you're just watching TV eating Doritos, you're still learning something. As silly as that may sound. But it looks like we've come to the conclusion of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Don't really seem to have a very busy day today. Probably stick those plants in the ground, maybe head over to Menards and probably upload this episode of Text Messages to YouTube and call it good. Sundays, it's usually just a good idea to lay back and relax a little bit, but yeah, it looks like I'll probably next week things might pick up a little bit as far as satisfying sponsors and getting more funding for the show, and maybe getting a better audio equipment and stuff like that. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back on Tuesday. Might have to start, depending on when we start having to satisfy sponsor demands, I might have to run an evening show. So it'd probably run it Tuesday evening and then upload it by Wednesday morning or something. But we'll see. Everything is in flux. The only constant is change and all that goofy stuff. So we're back on Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex, and we're going to have good times, balls deep, coming in the near future too. So hopefully that'll make St. Cloud great again.